Thanks again for your time. We respect your time and we're going to go ahead and move forward. If there are any other participants, we'll just let them join, but let's move forward. Welcome to the Maintaining a Powerful Mindset to Persevere in Business webinar. I know you're so excited. This virtual training is presented by the Illinois SBDC at Bill Bronzeville and the Kennedy Forum. And I'm Rebecca Chauncey, the advisor at the Illinois SBDC at Bill Bronzeville. And James Burns, the program director of Kennedy Forum, is also presenting. So why are you able to enjoy this training? It's brought to you at no cost, in part of funding through a cooperative agreement with the US SBA, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, the Urban Juncture Foundation, and Greater Englewood CDC. And again, we're honored to partner with the Kennedy Forum specifically for this training. So what's today's focus? Well, there's a connection between, first we're going to talk about the connection between a strong business mindset and mental health. Then we'll talk about mental health in general, signs of stress and stress management strategies. And then we'll have real application of how you can have a strong mind and stress management tools that are shared. And then of course there's time for questions and answers. If you would, make sure you're in a space where you are free of distractions so that you can make the most of our time together. And then we'll move forward accordingly. So when we talk about a strong business mindset and mental health, what is that exactly? Well, the mind allows us to think, to feel, and to be aware of the world and our experiences. Maintaining your mental health and, maintaining your mental health and training your mind to be most effective is key to thriving in business. And James, again, from the Kennedy Forum, is going to explain that mental health piece and why that is so important, and then we'll move forward. While, again, there's questions and answers, there's a period for that at the end. Feel free to answer, or rather ask questions in the chat and engage with us so we can make this the most enjoyable. And James, please share with us the mental health insight and all the good things you have for our business owners and aspiring business owners today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And thanks to everybody who helped to make this a reality, especially Bill Bronzeville and SBD, Illinois. And thanks also to, I see Mr. Derek Warren is one of our participants, and he and Adia helped to make this a reality with our relationship that we had down in Englewood. So as with any a community piece that is a free, some information and education, it takes a ton of collaboration. So thanks to everybody who helped make this a successful collaboration to make this a reality. And quickly, before I touch on mental health, I just want to say that the Kennedy Forum has been providing free community stakeholder mental health trainings for the South and West sides, particularly the South side over the past couple of years. And we are continuing to provide those trainings. So if you or your organization is interested in receiving a free training moving forward, please feel free, connect with Rebecca or connect with me, and we can make sure that we can make that a reality. And then quickly, the Kennedy Forum was founded by Patrick Kennedy, and Patrick is the son of Ted Kennedy, which also means that Patrick is the nephew of the late President John F. Kennedy. Patrick served in Congress for 16 years out of Rhode Island. And while he had some successes while in Congress, he realized that as someone living with mental health and substance use disorders, that he was not able to find the best version of himself while he was serving in Congress. So he left Congress and made it a point to find that best version of himself and got healthy. And after some time, living that best version of himself, he realized there are a lot of people in the world and in the country who do not have the same access to resources and the same privileges that he does. And in true Kennedy fashion, he realized that this is a matter of discrimination. We actually consider this a civil rights concern, that people who live with mental health and substance use disorders are treated unfairly in the insurance system and in so many other realms of society. And that's why we were founded. And our mission is to eliminate stigma and discrimination against those living with mental health and substance use disorders. And my baby, I already mentioned, is that work that we do across the city, training community stakeholders. We want to lower the level of stigma around mental health, but also increase people's awareness of the signs and symptoms. And then, of course, as we're going to learn today, what are some of the things that you can do to help yourself, right? So you can help yourself to then help your family, your community, your business, whatever it is. So let's jump into the slide here. Mental health is actually something that we all have. It is not just people who live with a serious mental illness or somebody who is addicted to alcohol or drugs. Everybody has mental health, and it includes our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being, and it impacts everything that we do, how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And I love to recall this quote when I'm facing adversity. And a lot of people are familiar with this quote, but I think it's really appropriate in this context here. The quote is, 10% of life is what happens to you. 90% of life is how you react. And your mental health is absolutely crucial in that 90% of your life, because your mental health determines how you are going to handle stress. And those can be small obstacles or large obstacles, like a pandemic, let's say, or the unrest following the murder of George Floyd. In addition to your mental health determining how you handle stress, it also is going to determine how you relate to other people, whether that is a loved one, someone that you live with maybe, or someone who's raised you, but also to the person that you see on the street or the person behind the counter at the local convenience store. And then the final piece here is your mental health is going to determine how you make decisions. And those can be small decisions, like whether or not you should have that extra cup of coffee or that cookie after lunch, but also large decisions like where should you live? Who should you marry? What kind of career should you pursue? And while I note that these decisions are of the mature variety, decisions that we make when we're grown and adults, that does not mean to minimize the significance of mental health for people at every stage of their life. Mental health is crucial to the human being, the whole human being, from cradle to the grave. And I often use the example of my 3-year-old daughter, who, despite the fact that her world is very different than mine, her mental health is just as important as a 3-year-old as mine is as a man in his 30s with a job and mortgage and things of that nature. Okay. So mental health is something that really is crucial through every phase of life in every single aspect. I also like to share a bit of an imagery that I think is really helpful to think about the importance of mental health. And that is, if you'll imagine a 3-legged stool, and we'll call this stool the stool of life. And each of those legs is representative of the piece of the person. That first leg, we'll say, is your physical health. The second leg is your spiritual health. And the third leg is your mental health. And if any of those legs is weak or broken, it is up to you to do everything in your power to fix it, because without that one leg, the stool of life simply cannot stand. I think that's really important imagery, and really gives it something really simple to grab onto to understand the importance of your mental health. Also important to note that mental health is very, very different for all people. And this is part of the trouble with people coming to terms with it, because it is so complex. Different factors in people's lives can have different impacts on the way that they go about their life. It's just really important to note that factors can have an impact on someone's outcomes, but it is not because they lack willpower or moral judgments, or they don't believe in God, or anything like that. Sometimes people respond differently to the many factors that change our lives. So just really important to note that, even siblings that grew up in the same house with the same advantages or the same disadvantages, very, very similar experiences, can respond differently. And let's talk about some of those factors that can contribute to our mental health. And these are kind of the big buckets of factors that can impact our mental health. The first we have here is biological factors, which is your genes or your brain chemistry. And then we have our life experiences can impact our mental health. And those experiences typically relate to trauma or some type of abuse. And then there is family history of mental health disorders, that being if you have a grandparent or a parent or a sibling who lives with mental health or substance use disorders, the likelihood that you also will live with mental health and substance use disorders actually goes up. And then the final the final factor that can contribute to our mental health is environmental factors. And this is something like a national threat. I think the first national threat that I understood as a human being was 9/11. And I think that there are a lot of different environmental factors that can play into it, such as if you're from a war-torn country, maybe even if you're from a neighborhood that is war-torn. I don't use that term lightly, but certainly that can have an impact on people. And then, of course, coronavirus can be considered a national threat. And then the unrest following the murder of George Floyd. All of these different environmental factors can contribute to our mental health. So let's jump ahead here and talk about some of the different signs of stress that we may actually be experiencing on a regular basis. And it may be due to coronavirus. It may be due to the unrest after the murder of George Floyd, or anything else that's happening in your life. That's the thing with mental health, is that it can be something very hyper local, right? It could be something that you are dealing with only within your house, let's say, but it could also be something that is global, like a pandemic. Okay. So I have a list here of signs of stress, and we actually have a total of 10 different signs of stress. And I'm going to walk through these really quick. And before I do that, I want to remind everybody that these signs of stress are incredibly normal, all right? And actually, stress can be helpful to us. The example I like to use when stress can be helpful is if you have a deadline for work, all of a sudden you say to yourself, my gosh, I need to do this work right now because I have that deadline looming. And chances are you get that done. Another great example is the stress that maybe you have your in-laws coming over for a barbecue on a weekend, and it's Thursday and you haven't done anything yet. The stress related to that will make you make that list, get to the grocery store, clean the house, whatever it is. So stress is not inherently bad. However, it is important to recognize the different signs of stress that we may be exhibiting. And this list of signs of stress comes directly from SAMHSA, which is a federal mental health association through the U.S. government. And these aren't this is not an exhaustive list of stress, but they are some of the most common. So let's go through these really quickly here. You may see an increase or a decrease in your energy and activity levels. So this is something that you can notice in yourself, or maybe if you have kids, or maybe a parent that you live with. Especially now during quarantine life, many of us are still at home. You just want to be mindful of the fact if your energy or your activity levels maybe shoot up or go down. Another sign of stress that many of us experience is an increase in alcohol, tobacco, or drug use. This is perhaps the one that people are really familiar with because it's kind of popularized in culture. But just the fact that I know that liquor stores have done incredible business dating back to April even, because people aren't sure what to do with themselves. They're sitting at home. Maybe they're a little bit bored or whatever it is. And why not grab the extra bottle of wine or the extra case of beer or whatever it might be? So that's fairly common to see and is an indicator of stress. You may also see an increase in irritability or anger. This is, I think, relatively self-explanatory, but just be mindful if maybe you have a short temper with that coworker or with your loved one, that it could just be your response to stress. Some folks might even have trouble relaxing or sleeping. Again, really common sign of stress where you feel like you're a little bit on edge at all times. And then another sign of stress that's very frequent is crying. And, I think that this one, based on some folks that I've talked to and some of the clinicians I've talked to, it's the one that can actually, it scares people quite a bit because if they burst into tears on a regular basis, they're concerned that something's really wrong. But really, it could just be attributed to the stress that you're facing due to the circumstances that you find yourself in. So let's jump ahead to the next list of the signs of stress that we face and are totally natural. We have worrying excessively. So this can be, this is relatable to coronavirus or George Floyd or anything after that we may find ourselves experiencing. But we could be worrying about our loved ones. We could be worrying about ourselves. We could be worrying about the state of the city or the country. All those different levels of worry, especially if it is excessive, can be attributed to our stress. There also is this thing where people want to be alone. And this is especially troublesome, I would argue, when you do live with a family, when you are part of that family and all of a sudden you want to be alone all of the time. Not only are you removing something from your own life, but you're removing something from other people and their lives. Again, nothing to be too concerned with, but just understanding that um, wanting to be alone most of the time is in fact a sign of stress, right? And again, as we identify these things, it's helpful because we know then how to respond in order to try and fix that stress. um, the next we have here, as far as signs of stress, is we may have difficulty communicating or listening. I will speak from my personal experience. This is very easy for me to fall into because I'm thinking about something else rather than being in the moment. So oftentimes my 3-year-old and I will be trying to communicate, which can be challenging in and of itself, right? But when you are in a heightened level of stress and you're thinking about work, or you're thinking about all these other things that are happening, sometimes it can be really difficult just to have really base level conversations. Again, just a sign of stress and something that we can work through. You may also have difficulty giving or accepting help. I think that many of us are wired this way, that you don't want to give or accept help, um, especially accepting help. I think that's it's a point of pride for many people. But if you see an increase in your difficulty in giving or accepting help, that could be a sign of your stress. And then the final one we have here is your inability to feel pleasure or have fun. This is, again, another relatively common sign of stress and something that I imagine many people are feeling right now. Because how could you possibly feel pleasure or have fun when it feels like so many things are on fire and you're not sure which direction the world is going? This is a really common thing for people to feel, especially in this moment in time. Again, signs of stress, totally normal. Do not worry about them. We're going to talk about ways to manage them and give yourself a better opportunity to live a fully healthy life. So, as we move on here, I'd like to talk about some of those strategies, right? How do we actually manage that stress in order to put ourselves in a position to succeed? So the first step is we have to understand that stress and anxiety are natural human responses. Okay, so um, while we talked about the fact that stress can sometimes be a good thing, um, it is totally natural, and it can be a bad thing if there is too much of it. Just know that this is part of the way that we as human beings are wired. All right, stress helps us to survive. And if you think about anytime you've ever been, I was on vacation in the Smoky Mountains, I think, and a black bear or brown bear, black bear, a bear, a large bear walked up behind me, and that fight or flight kicked in, right? Your brain sends adrenaline to you and says, hey, you got to do something here. Anybody who's ever experienced that, that's your hard wiring of your brain trying to survive a moment. The challenge is when we feel a heightened level of stress or anxiety constantly. It's not just that moment when the bear walks upon you, but every single day we're waking up with it or going to bed with it. That's when stress can really become troublesome. So just understand it's totally natural. We don't want to tamp it down. If we don't accept that stress and anxiety are natural to us, then we're avoiding the problem. And we all know by, ignoring a problem doesn't help it go away. So just accept that fact, okay? And the next time you feel yourself maybe really stressed out or really anxious, I encourage you to take a moment and say to yourself, I feel anxious right now, and that's okay. I'm uncomfortable with this feeling, and that's okay. I don't know how long this will last, and I'm okay with that. The next step here is to recognize the signs of that stress. We just went over a list of 10 of the most common signs of stress, and those mostly fall into the buckets of your physical side effects or your behavioral choices, especially as it relates to maybe your drug or alcohol or tobacco use. But also it's important to recognize that your feelings and emotions can be altered by the stress level that you're experiencing. And in addition to your feelings and your emotions, your thoughts can also be impacted by your stress level. So the next time maybe you have a really short temper, or maybe you have a thought that's kind of gross and you're not, you're like, oh, I can't believe I just thought that. Just remember that it's okay. And just recognize it as, hey, that could be my brain's response to the stress that I am experiencing. Okay. And it's totally natural. You don't have to be afraid of it. Just accept it. Okay. Once you're able to recognize those signs of stress, the next step is to share your feelings with someone that you trust. So, and I'm sorry, my 3-year-old is in the background yelling right now because it just started to rain. So my apologies for that if you hear any background. You want to share your feelings with someone that you trust. And for many of us, that is a sibling or a child or maybe even a parent. And when I talk about sharing your feelings with someone that you trust, it doesn't have to be a 45-minute conversation laying down on somebody's sofa. It can be a simple conversation with your loved one, and all you have to do is say, hey, I'm really experiencing a high level of stress right now. That's all you have to say. And that can be enough. And immediately you can feel that burden lifted off your shoulders. So if anybody is feeling really stressed or anxious about whatever it is, you don't even have to identify what it is per se. You can merely vocalize this to a loved one and say, hey, I'm really stressed right now. You will feel so much better. I encourage you to try this if you haven't done it, especially in the past month or so with all that's happening in the world. In addition to sharing your feelings with someone you trust, you can also release your thoughts about stress and anxiety in other ways. It doesn't have to be verbally to a loved one. Perhaps the most common way that people like to release their thoughts of anxiety and stress is by writing it down on a piece of paper. So I encourage everybody to give this a go. The beauty of it is not only does it allow you to put that thought onto paper and it's now out of your brain and into the world, but also there's a physiological benefit because you cannot write as quickly as you think. So there is a bit of meditation that can come over you as your brain slows down while you're writing. So give that a go if you feel yourself maybe a little bit anxious from time to time. Try that for 5 minutes at a time for a couple of weeks at a time. And I guarantee that you'll feel better once you get into that practice. And once you're able to understand, recognize, share, and release, the next step is knowing when to ask for help. And it's not just knowing, by the way. I should just change this slide to note that it's knowing when to ask for help and then actually asking for help. It is a sign of strength, knowing when to ask for help and then reaching out. It is not a sign of weakness. I know that many of us were taught that asking for help is a sign of weakness. It is not. It is a sign of strength. To be vulnerable is actually incredibly powerful. So the next time you're feeling overwhelmed by maybe work or parental responsibilities, reach out to a coworker, reach out to your significant other and say, hey, can you help me meet this deadline? Can you feed the kids lunch, whatever it might be? And you will immediately feel a sense of relief that can allow you to refocus on what you're trying to achieve. But also, it opens up a line of communication between yourself and that person because in the future, if that individual needs some help, they'll know that you reached out for help and that they can reach out to you when they're in a time of need. So there's a great opportunity to bond as humans by asking for help. And just keep in mind, asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. So as we jump ahead here, let's talk about some things that we want to try and avoid. This slide here is what mental health experts refer to as thinking traps. And because they believe that when we get anxious, when we are stressed out, we tend to get trapped in false or limited ways of thinking. And these thought patterns in particular can create a debilitating negative spiral that can kind of consume us. And rather than helping us solve a problem, it instead makes us feel hopeless and helpless. So while human beings are incredibly unique and have this opportunity and the ability to think through problems, if we're thinking through problems in these ways, it isn't actually helpful. So let's touch on these really quickly. And the point here is just for you to be cognizant of the way that you're thinking about a particular challenge that you're facing, okay? So the first we have here is catastrophizing, which is just imagining the worst possible outcome. I think we all know somebody like this. This is kind of popularized in movies and books and things like that. If you're thinking about the worst possible outcome, not a great use of your energy, okay? So just try and take a step back from that way of thinking if you ever find yourself there. The next we have here is mind reading, which is just imagining what other people are thinking. So this is actually a really difficult one to avoid because as human beings, we are always aware, usually on a subconscious level, of what people are saying or they're not saying. You're trying to really gauge what their position is and how authentic they are. So either way, when you find yourself trying to read people's minds, it is not a great use of your energy. So just try to be mindful of that and take a step back whenever you need to. The next we have here is fortune telling, same vein as mind reading. And when you're trying to tell the future without any information or data, you're throwing a dart at nothing, right? You're taking a stab in the dark, as my mother would say. So try not to tell the future without any information. That's just not a great use of your energy and also isn't going to bring you to a solution that's really helpful. The next we have here is one that I actually fall into a little bit more than I like to admit, and that is black and white thinking. And that is just considering only two possible outcomes to a circumstance. And by virtue of the fact that we're saying that it's black or white, that means that those two outcomes tend to be on the far end of the spectrums from each other. For example, in the pandemic, we could say something to the tune of, the pandemic is either going to blow over or is going to end the world. We already know that the pandemic isn't going to blow over, right? We're in month 4 now, and it is incredibly unlikely that it's going to end the world. So as is much of life, the outcome doesn't land on the black or the white. The outcome lands in the gray, all right? Life is really complex. So the next time you find yourself in that black or white thinking, it has to be this or this, just remember that not a great use of your energy and that life doesn't usually work out in such a clean, simple way. And then the final we have here is overgeneralizing. So that's just painting all situations with that generalized outcome. Again, life is too complex. It is far too nuanced to believe that all situations can fit into this generalized outcome. Okay, so I just want to remind everybody again that you just want to consciously recognize when you are thinking in these ways. Work on recognizing your thoughts. It's it's a simple idea, but it takes a little bit of practice because when you're thinking, you're just thinking. You're not thinking about thinking. And I guess that's the difficult part. I am encouraging you to think about thinking. But once you get into it, you'll begin to recognize when you are actually helping yourself solve a problem, or maybe when you're not helping yourself and you're making things maybe worse than what they are. All right. So as we jump ahead here, we're going to talk about some things that you can do, not things to avoid, but things you can do. So the first here, really important, is to keep things in perspective. So I think everybody does this. I think everybody's familiar with this tool. I just encourage everybody to do this as often as you need to in order to stay grounded and, make sure that you're keeping the big picture in mind. For many of us, that's our families or something like that, and maybe a job even. I also encourage everybody, while you're revisiting this thing, I'll use my job, for example. I keep thinking, well, I'm so grateful I have a job. Eventually, that could lose its shine a little bit, right? You're like, all right, so what? I got a job. What you want to do when your thing, your perspective loses a little bit of that shine is be a little bit more specific about that perspective, right? That way you have an opportunity to drill down and be that much more grateful for some of the finer points of whatever it is. And for example, I'll say, I have a great job. I have an opportunity to help other people who may be in search of some answers. It's very fulfilling to me. My boss is great. The work is flexible, and it's a great organization, right? That is the specificity sometimes that is necessary in order for that perspective to remain fresh to you, okay? So give that a shot. I highly encourage it. The next here is I encourage everybody to take breaks from watching, reading, listening to the news, especially on social media. I am as guilty as anybody. I know that once the coronavirus became real and following the murder of George Floyd, I was jumping on Twitter looking for the answers to the universe. And that may sound like hyperbole, but I am serious. I was looking for somebody to give me some sort of answer. I wanted a silver lining, and it doesn't exist there. Like I looked, it doesn't exist. So I just encourage everybody to stay away from too much news, because not only can it be information overload, but there isn't a lot of positivity coming from your news. There's not videos of cats and babies doing cute things. All right. So just try to take a break from the news, find the right balance for you, and then stick to it. When you do find that balance, I encourage you to be sure that you are consuming the best news, the factual news, the accurate information. You don't want to be sharing rumors. You don't want to share the bad information. Number one, you're going to make decisions based upon that information. And number two, when you talk to other people, your mom or your siblings or your coworkers, chances are, if you have bad information and you don't realize it, you may share that information. And then somebody else that trusts you is going to make a decision based upon the bad information you've given them. So just keep that in mind, okay? Get the facts and make sure you're basing yourself and grounding yourself in that information. And that kind of dovetails to the next point, which is be sure that you're connecting with others, not just to share the factual news, right? But talk to people you trust about what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And this is not the same as what I talked about a couple of slides ago. Share the way that you're feeling with someone you love. Certainly you can do that with anybody, but it's important to touch base with other people just to see what's going on, right? For example, I have a 3-year-old who her emotions are up and down. I also have a 1-year-old, and life can be challenging because of the different balls I need to keep in the air sometimes. And talking to somebody else who has similar balls in the air is really helpful. So I talk to my friends with kids. I also will share with my mother. I'm one of 6 kids, and my mother was single when we were growing up, and I will say to her, "Mom, how didn't you murder one of us?" Right? I say that, I'm totally joking, of course, but how did you do it with 6 of us and put dinner on the table? And she laughs and says, "Don't worry, you'll get through it." So being able to connect with other people about what they're experiencing right now can really not just build relationships and bring us closer together, but also there's a great sense of connectivity that can be gained from that as well. So I encourage everybody to tap into that if you can. And that leads me to the final point here. When you're connecting with other people on whatever level it is, be sure that you're practicing compassion and empathy. All right. These are really, really important. And by the way, compassion and empathy are not things that are just crucial during this time of unrest, civil unrest, or dealing with quarantine and working from home. But this is something that everybody should take with them moving forward, because it really helps to build that human connection and understand where people are coming from. Just being able to listen. And that's important when you're thinking about empathy. It's this idea that you're not there to solve anybody's problem or to provide answers. You're there to listen and to not cast any judgment or guilt. For example, if I were to say to my wife, I feel really stressed about work and being a parent full time right now. If she were to say, if she was not listening with empathy, she might say something like, well, at least you have a job. Well, of course, I keep that in perspective. I understand that, but that does not change the way that I'm feeling. That does not change my experiences right here and now about being stressed. Instead, when she responds by saying, at least you have a job, I just feel worse. Like, gosh, how come I can't just get over this fact that I should be grateful I have a job and I'm a parent and I have all these things going for me? If you're listening with empathy, the proper response would be something along the lines of, it must be really hard. That's all you have to say. You don't have to say anything else. It's just understanding where somebody is coming from, okay? And again, this is applicable to any person in any walk of life. Just try to listen and understand where they're coming from and meet them where they are, all right? You don't want to try to fix anything for them. So now that we've talked a lot about stress and strategies to manage your stress, let's talk a little bit about self-care. The brain is part of the body. Patrick Kennedy likes to say this. I love to say this. This makes sense. It's intuitive. It's logical. My 3-year-old gets it. Unfortunately, society does not treat the brain as part of the body. And that's a bit of a different conversation for another day. But I'm bringing it to this presentation because I think it's important for us all to realize that anything that we do to our body is going to have an impact on our brain and vice versa. It's an ecosystem, okay? So I just want to encourage everybody to figure out what self-care looks like for you. It's going to be different for everybody, just like mental health. Figure out what self-care looks like for you, and then put yourself in a position to make those healthy decisions, all right? So the first point here, as far as, taking care of your body, or I should say of self-care, is taking care of your body. This is like the traditional sense of taking care of your body, physical stuff, exercise. So encourage everybody to find something that keeps them physically active. So that can be a walk or a run or a stationary bike or a real bike. Also encourage everybody, if you're not a big exerciser, to do some deep breathing, maybe some stretching or meditating. Yoga is a mix of breathing, stretching, and meditating all together. It doesn't take a lot of space. You could do it in your home. Whatever it is, make sure that you are doing something physical to take care of yourself. And in addition to doing something physical, like staying active, getting some exercise, moving your limbs, it's important that we eat healthy foods. I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist, and the rule of thumb in my house is everything in moderation. You don't have to swear off Oreos or, the bag of chips or whatever, but just try to balance it out. Fruits, vegetables, natural foods, stay away from the junk food, the processed sugar and things of that nature. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water, and then also be mindful of too much coffee, or I should say caffeine above coffee, because the caffeine can impact your sleep. So let's talk about sleep for a quick minute. The CDC says that sleep is a public health epidemic, and getting enough sleep will improve the way that your brain functions. So you think back to that quote we had in the beginning, 10% of life is what happens to you, 90% is how you react. If you get enough sleep, you will react. 90% of your life will be better because you've gotten a good night's sleep. A good night's sleep will also decrease negative health outcomes like obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. So the big ones. And a good night's sleep also strengthens your immune system. So simple. Just get a good night's sleep and the world seems like a better place. So I encourage everybody to find what that looks like for you. Simple tips. Make sure you're going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, even if you stay up late. I used to say watching Michael Jordan highlights while The Last Dance was going, but I guess I'm not doing that much anymore. But even if you stay up late, wake up at the same time. It'll help you get into a rhythm. And also make sure that you are giving yourself time to wind down before bedtime. So you're not just, you know, watching that action flick and then jumping right into bed. Okay. Give yourself an opportunity to unwind. And then the final point here is you want to make sure that you're avoiding alcohol and drugs. Okay. Everything in moderation. The next point I have here is make sure you're giving yourself a chance to unwind. Um, we recharge when we sleep, but also we deserve an opportunity to recharge when we're not sleeping, when we're still active, when we're with our loved ones. So find whatever that is. My wife loves to bake. I like to watch sports. I found myself watching soccer. I'm like American all the way. I'm Chicagoan all the way. I want basketball and football, but I find myself watching soccer because that's a good way for me to kind of unwind and just find something I enjoy. Right? Just people running around kicking a ball works for me. Find what that is for you. And then the next point here, make sure you get outside, go for a walk, go for a run, whatever it might be. Of course, practice social distancing, but all of the research shows if you can get into a park or especially a natural area. I live near Jackson Park on the south side. You know, I do that. Got to the lake twice in the past couple of days. Boosts your energy, improves your memory. Of course, there's the physical upside of getting outside and being active. So do those things. All right. And then the final point I have here is create and stick to a normal routine. All right. That is going to be really crucial. And this is helpful whether you're in a pandemic or not. Set yourself up to succeed. You can build in all the important things that you need to do, whether it's work, whether it's personal, it's unwinding, it's doing the things that you enjoy. Make sure that you have a routine and try and stick to it. Be flexible, but try and stick to it. Okay, that was a lot of talking by me. Thanks to everybody for being patient with me and listening, and apologies for the 3-year-old not happy napping in the background, but I'm going to kick it back to Rebecca now.
Thanks, James. And so hopefully everyone has benefited from understanding the foundation of mental health. And now we can talk about some techniques that you, as current business owners or aspiring business owners, want to keep in mind so that you can keep thriving, right? One of the things that James mentioned was to meditate, or meditation is a form of self-care and also a way for you to maintain or release that stress. So one form of meditation is mindfulness. What is mindfulness exactly? Can someone type in the chat, let me know if you are aware of mindfulness? Have you heard of that term before? And if you have, what does what does it mean to you? And if you haven't, let me know. And if you can't type in the chat, that's all right. But I just wanted to get an idea of whether or not you guys understand. Okay, I've got, thank you. Sophia says yes, she has heard of mindfulness. Great. Well, just to make sure everyone is on the same page, essentially it has to do with being present, right? Right now, we have the gift of connecting with one another, even if it's from a distance virtually. But we also want to embrace the fact that we're breathing with ease, right? That is a gift. Whether you recognize it or not, you know, it's number one, a sign that you're alive. And also, when you think of mindfulness, it has to do with just moving through a moment without being carried away. I'll give you a great example of that, and James handled it well, right? His daughter was in the background, right? But instead of getting flustered, he explained to us, right? And I'm sure, I don't know if you were breathing deeply, James, but he was clearly breathing and just explained to us, you know what, pardon me, everyone, but my daughter is upset right now. So that is a good example of how you can be mindful. You know, just he was aware, and just like we were present about what was happening, but he didn't get upset. And we do have that ability to do that. And so now let's practice more mindfulness, but in a wonderful way, which gives you a time, or you'll get a few minutes to relax in this process. Again, I hope if you joined us at the very beginning, I mentioned that it would be important for you to be in a space where you're distraction free. So hopefully you are in that space now. I just want you to breathe, sit, number one, comfortably, and then breathe deeply. It's important for you to breathe from your stomach, right? Or your belly. And then just listen to the music that I'm going to play. If there are some thoughts that come to mind, let them just flow, right? And you don't have to get carried away by them. Just make the most of what you hear and breathing deeply. How does that sound? Type in the chat and let me know if that works for you. Hopefully so. All right. And please close your eyes. Okay, how does everyone feel? You may open your eyes now. Type in the chat and let me know how you feel. Are you more relaxed? Hopefully that is the case. Are you a little sleepy? All of these feelings are okay. But most importantly, you were able to just relax for a moment. You got to be fully present. Okay, we got some sleepy. We got great. Thanks for your remarks. Okay, a little sleepy. That's okay because it's also a sign of you being relaxed. So you know that works. Derek says he needs about 2 more hours. Well, after you finish work, hopefully, perhaps you can carve out time to do so. Thanks everyone for your feedback. And so we're going to move forward, right? Just keep this technique in mind. Just as, we took that was essentially about 4 minutes to just be still and relax. Consider implementing that in your day, especially, as business owners, there's a number of things that come up and you have to address them. But if you are frazzled, as James mentioned earlier, your brain can be so powerful, right? You can use it to work for you or not so much. And so you want it to work for you and make the best of it so you can thrive in your business and life as a whole. Let's talk a little bit more about the benefits of mindfulness, right? You can move through moments easier. I gave the example of what happened with James and his daughter. You can think of hopefully examples in your life, perhaps with your business or things of that nature. Thank you. Let me just add this point. Tamara says that she uses soft music while she's working and when she goes to bed to help shut down. Excellent point, Tamara. Thank you for sharing. Another benefit of mindfulness, everyone, is that anxiety and depression are lessened or eliminated. How powerful is that? I know that I've been meditating and practicing mindfulness for 11 years now. And fortunately, with the groups I've had the benefit of working with, they too have talked to me about how life changing that can be as far as practicing mindfulness and using some other tools. Mindfulness also can help you improve your sleep patterns. So I don't know about you, but who likes a good quality night's rest? I love it. And, when we don't sleep as well, I think the people around us see the difference if we're real with ourselves. So let's talk about two parts of mind, right? There's the conscious, which is your personality and senses, and then the subconscious part of your mind, which connects the outer and inner self. It records everything that occurs throughout your life. So sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not so great because the essence of the way that we operate oftentimes comes from the subconscious. Perhaps a poor example or a sad example, unfortunately, may be that perhaps as a child, you were told by someone that you're not smart. As an adult, you may think that at times, and that doesn't help you thrive in business nor in your life in general. But fortunately, there are some ways that you can overcome that. Another thing, I just want to bring up a couple of more points as far as the essence of the conscious and the subconscious mind. So your conscious interprets the information from your subconscious as rational and logical, okay? And the subconscious, as I said, has information in it that can be true in your current experience or not. It could be positive or negative. I gave that negative example. A positive example could be on the flip side. Perhaps you were always told you were brilliant and you could do anything you put your mind to. So that you've carried that throughout your life, however many years you've been given the gift of being on this planet. And with that, you keep you keep that in mind, like, oh, even in the most frustrating moments, I used to teach and I would tell students, remember, I am brilliant. If nothing else, in those frustrating moments, and you as a business owner know about that, there can be frustrating moments, but you keep in mind, I am brilliant, and you keep going the distance, hopefully. So that takes us to the second strong business mindset technique, and that's to create new high energy declarations. Oh, excuse me, everyone. Sophia was saying she was just explaining what I shared with her children yesterday. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. We have the gift of having an amazing brain, or our mind is such, it's just wonderful. And that would have to be another webinar. I could talk to you about the ways that you maximize that. And I think James alluded to that as well. But for now, let's just talk about one way that you can create these high energy declarations so you can switch up the subconscious and eliminate those negative thoughts. So scientifically, you can change a habit after at least 21 days. Does that mean you can only work on a new habit for 21 days? No, no, right? If at least 21 days, you'll start to see a change. But if you keep going, I would say it particularly after 90 days, wow, things become automatic because you have really trained your mind to embrace whatever that declaration is. And so today I'm happy to share with you how you can do that using a common tool, your cell phone, right? How many people have a cell phone? Let me know in the chat if you have a cell phone. Some of you may be on it as we're communicating now. If you don't have one, someone, yep, okay. Yes, I think we all pretty much do, right? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your responses. However, have you taken the time to use your cell phone in a way to create these new high energy declarations? I'm thinking not. So there is a tool on your phone, and it may, depending on the device that you use, it will vary, but essentially it's the recorder. You can use the recorder to do a number of things. I know some people, and as business owners and aspiring business owners, you can embrace this. Sometimes you have some ideas and you could be in the car or someplace where you can't write those ideas down. You can use the recorder to speak those ideas, right? But in this case, with the declarations, you want to create the new term or thought so that you're able to have a new habit. So a good one for a business owner clearly would be, I am brilliant and I make wise decisions. Can we all agree with that? Type in the chat. I mean, it's important that as a business owner, and frankly, just throughout your life, you want to make sound decisions, right? So that you can keep going forward. And as we said, persevere in business. So what you do is simply take your cell phone, and maybe if you're able to do this now, you can just look on your phone to see if you have that voice recorder app, and then you could take the time to record. And let me see. Pardon me if well, I'll keep moving forward in the essence of time, but you'll look for the recorder, you press it, and you can say, I am brilliant, I make sound decisions. I am brilliant, I make sound decisions. It may just be those two, just repeating that, right? You stop it, and then you can play that as often as you like. What you're doing is increasing or shifting a thought that you have about yourself in your mind. And if you, again, you do that listening, let me make an important point. Make sure you are listening to those declarations when you are in a space where you feel good. So hopefully that's maybe upon going to bed, or as Tamara said, it could be at the end of the evening because you're listening to some soft music and you're relaxed. So then maybe after listening to the music for a little bit, you'll play that declaration or however many other declarations you choose to make. But before you know it, you've got these new thoughts in your subconscious mind, right? Or in your brain, which the conscious is going to take it as some new information, and you'll start to act differently. And you can kind of play a game and notice what you do differently in your life and the kinds of experiences that you have to see how it's worked and how it makes a difference. So I hope that's clear. If there are any questions about that, please type it in the chat. And as a matter of fact, that brings us to our time for Q&A. Are there any questions or comments about the information you plan to implement that James shared about mental health and some stress management strategies, or for me, as it relates to a couple of those techniques that we shared so that you can have a strong business mindset and frankly, just a strong mindset to thrive in your life as a whole. Any questions, you can, if needed, you can unmute yourself and ask that question, or you could type in the chat before we wrap things up. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, everyone is good. Well, thank you. I want to thank you all for those of you, and pardon me, this is, I wanted to mention that earlier. It's bittersweet. It is our last session within the Road to Recovery series that the Illinois SBDC at Bill Bronzeville and at Greater Englewood have put on for the last 6 weeks. And it is such an honor, it's been an honor to work with the Greater Englewood team. Today it's been an honor to work with James Burns of the Kennedy Forum. And I thank you all that have been with us throughout the series. And for those of you that just tuned in today, we thank you for this opportunity. Contact us for appointments. So if you're interested in advising for your business, then you'll want to reach out to us. If you're in Bronzeville, contact us. Our information is here. If you are in Greater Englewood, reach out to our Greater Englewood team here. The information is there. And then the Kennedy Forum, James has his contact information. James, did you want to add anything else?
No, I think this is great, and I appreciate all that you've done to help make this a reality. And please don't anybody hesitate to reach out to me.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time, and we will send you a recording of this and some special links for more relaxing music that you may consider so you can practice more mindfulness and stay at ease. Thank you, Sophia, for your comment. And thank you all for your participation again. All the best with your businesses, and everyone stay healthy and safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.